Ethical hackers play a critical role in safeguarding the society. Their work ensures trust and security in digital space. Hello, my name is John Ikogonoe, your cybersecurity expert, and today I'll be taking you on the path of the ethical hacker. So you yourself go sabi one or two on top of the matter. And in the end, go feel respect and appreciate their contribution to the society.
At the end of this session, you should be able to define ethical hacking, distinguish between ethical hacking and malicious hacking, also mention some types of pen testing, and also the 3 pen testing perspectives. You should identify some threat actors and explain the 5 ethical hacking phases. And most importantly, you should learn to set up a cybersecurity lab. And then within it, you should be able to use Wireshark and Snort to identify malicious activity on your network. So before we proceed, I want you to take a look at this. Who is a hacker? According to NIST Computer Security Resource Center, they define a hacker as an unauthorized user who attempts to gain access to an information system. Since we're interested in morality of it, we're going to be focusing on ethical hacker. So an ethical hacker is described as a person who acts like an attacker or a malicious actor and evaluates the security posture of a computer network for the purpose of minimizing the risk.
Now, there are 2 types of hacking. The first is ethical hacking. It is a legitimate and beneficial practice aimed at improving security by identifying and addressing vulnerabilities. Now, it's important for us to note that ethical hacking is performed with authorization and it is legal, as against the malicious hacking. It is unauthorized and it's illegal practice, and it's intended to cause harm, to steal data, or disrupt service. Now, remember, malicious hacking is not performed with authorization and it is illegal. Now, ethical hacking and malicious hacking are 2 distinct activities within the realm of cybersecurity, with a very significant difference in their intent, their legality, and their impact.
Hackers are grouped based on colors or categorized based on colors. We have the white hat, the gray hat, and the black hat hackers. So starting with the white hat hackers, we are just individuals who act like malicious actors. We've seen them because they are ethical professionals. They tend to evaluate the security posture of a computer's network or system for the purpose of mimicking risk, just for the safety of the organization. They'll use hacking tools or hacking skills for defensive purposes. They also identify weakness and implement countermeasures, while also working with permission from data owners. The next, let's look at gray hat hackers. Gray hat hackers are just in between. They just face where the money is. They work offensively or defensively, depending on the situation they find themselves. They are interested in hacking tools as well, and security technologies. They are self-acclaimed ethical hacker, even though they don't follow the rules or abide by ethics. So they're usually indifferent about permissions, because they lack permission before they engage in their hacking. So they are not white hat hackers. They just claim to be that, but wherever the money calls, they go. So the next is black hat hackers.
So the black hat hackers do not care. They are the malicious actors. They actually gain unauthorized access. They destroy data, deny surveys, and cause harm. They're, like I said, they're highly malicious, and they have malicious intent and cannot be trusted.
goals attackers seek to achieve is 1. Breaching computer system security by targeting the core security systems like the confidentiality, which is keeping your data private, authenticity, which is verifying the user's identity, also integrity, which is ensuring that data is accurate, and also the availability, keeping your systems operational. Another goal we seek to achieve is denial of service attack. Here they tend to target the availability of your system and the network, and also overload system resources or bandwidth, and also flood targets with incoming messages, forcing them to shut down eventually. Then finally, we will say that they also look at information theft. Here they try to steal data or sensitive data in clear text, thereby altering the confidentiality in this case, and also unauthorized data access. This is not just limited to network alone. Computer, your disk, your laptops, your PCs, or again your IoTs are also at risk here, because they know that organizations own these devices and they contain confidential data that can reveal the security measures.
So here's a quick comparison between ethical hacking and the malicious hacking. For the ethical hacking, you are legally authorized to improve security, whereas the malicious hacking isn't. They're designed by nature to cause harm and cause destruction because they gain unauthorized access, steal data, and distribute malicious softwares over the system or network. In contrast, the ethical hacking is beneficial to both the organization and the nation at large because they engage in penetration testing and discover vulnerability within a system or a network, and they're actually certified to carry out this task, whereas for malicious actors, they are not. Ethical hacking is broad and it includes multiple domains of security testing, such as web application, network hacking, wireless network hacking, social engineering, physical hacking, mobile device hacking, system hacking. But in all, it is encompassed within these basic 5 types of hacking, as you can see here. Now, remember that an ethical hacker's goal is to analyze the security posture of the network or systems infrastructure in an effort to identify and possibly exploit any security weakness found, and then determine if that compromise is possible, right? This process is called security penetration testing or ethical hacking. Yes, penetration testing is like a younger brother to ethical hacking. So penetration testing involves a structured, that's a keyword, a structured approach to identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities in a system. The process is typically divided into a number of phases, each having specific goals and activities. Just like ethical hacking, its purpose is to protect systems, network, and data from malicious attack. So as a penetration tester, your job is to test the network and system security for vulnerabilities, then use the same tools that a hacker use to identify and fix every weakness you find, then also to strengthen the security posture of the network or system. So we have a number of penetration testing, which include network service testing, web application testing, wireless network testing, client-side testing, social engineering, physical penetration testing, and cloud penetration testing. But in all these are combined within the most common environmental consideration for the types of penetration testing, which includes the network infrastructure testing, which is basically the switches, the router, firewalls, and other supporting resources such as the authentication, the authorization, and the accounting servers, that's the AAA servers, and the IPSs, that is intrusion prevention systems. Also, penetration testing on the wireless infrastructure may sometimes be included in the scope of network infrastructure testing. The next is the application-based testing, which focuses on the the security weakness of enterprise application, like those softwares that you use. And Open Web Application Security Project has a number, that's OWASP, have detailed resource on this subject matter. Then the last is the penetration testing in the cloud, or cloud penetration testing. They include assessing web infrastructure and configuration for misconfigurations or flaws within the cloud system. So cloud service providers such as Azure, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platforms are the environment for this. Now, the cloud security depends on the type of the cloud model, whether it's the software as a service, the platform as a service, or the infrastructure as a service. But regardless of the model used, the cloud security is responsibility of both the client and the cloud provider. So what's the difference between ethical hacking and penetration testing? Ethical hacking is a broad, continuous practice aimed at uncovering weaknesses across an entire organization's IT ecosystem. It is strategic and it's ongoing because it's not time-bound, and it covers diverse attack surfaces. It is, like I said before, it is broader and exploratory, and it covers people, process, technology, and also the physical or structure of the security system. So the next is the penetration testing. Penetration testing is more narrow, it is time-bound, and it focuses on simulating real-world attack against specific systems or assets. It is tactical, and it focuses on specific systems or environments with defined methodologies. A typical example of this would be for an ethical hacking is where he or she tests the employee's susceptibility to phishing email, or probing a cloud misconfiguration and attempt privilege escalation across multiple systems. Whereas for penetration testing, a tester, he or she might focus only on a new web application, or trying to explore the SQL injection or cross-site scripting vulnerability. Well, in short, or in summary, we could say ethical hacking is strategic and it's ongoing, whereas penetration testing is tactical and it's point in time because it's heavily time-bound. So organizations would prefer ethical hacking for its breadth, because it covers a large scope, whereas penetration testing will be considered for its depth, right? Because it just goes deep, focus on one part and goes deep into it. Penetration testing methodologies, or pen testing methodologies, are structured approaches to conducting penetration testing. There are a number of penetration testing methodologies that have been used and adopted for a while now, and they continue to be updated as new threats emerge. So I'm going to be mentioning some of the common penetration testing methodologies and their standard. The first is the Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual, which was designed by PTES, and it's distributed by the Institute for Security and Open Methodologies. Well, this document lays out repeatable and consistent security testing, and it involves some of the key phases, which are operational security metrics, the trust analysis, the workflow, the human security testing, physical security testing, wireless security testing, telecommunication security testing, data network security testing, compliance regulation, and finally, reporting with the security test audit report. The Penetration Testing Execution Standard, PTES. Well, it provides information about the types of attacks and methods, and it also provides information on the latest tools available to accomplish the testing methods outlined. The PTES involves a number of phases, which includes pre-engagement interaction, the intelligence gathering, the threat modeling, the vulnerability analysis, the exploitation, the post-exploitation, and finally, reporting. The next is the information system security assessment framework. It's another penetration testing methodology that's similar to the others we have discussed, but it comes with some additional phase, which includes information gathering, your network mapping, vulnerability identification, penetration, gaining access and privilege escalation, enumerating further, compromising remote users or the site, maintaining access, and finally covering tracks. Next is the NIST SP 800-115, which is a special publication. Well, this is a document that's created by the National Institute for Standards and Technology in the US. It provides a technical guidance to information security testing. SP 800-115, which is Special Publication 115, is considered as an industrial standard for penetration testing guidance and is called out in many industrial standards and documentation. The next is the OWASP Web Security Testing Guide. It is a compilation of many years of work by the OWASP members. It provides additional test case for web application vulnerabilities such as the cross-site scripting, that's the XSS, the XML, the XXE attacks, the CSRF, that's the cross-site request forgery, SQL injection attacks, amongst others, as well as how to prevent and mitigate these attacks. So that's that about the methodologies and standards. So at this juncture, I would like to clear a particular air. Now, in an earlier session, I think session 2, we talked about general and specialized framework in cybersecurity. I would like to state clearly that these are not the same as methodologies and standards. In penetration testing, they complement each other though. The framework tells you what needs securing. The method tells you how testing is. The framework is just the big picture of governance and compliance. So we say the pen testing method or standard is the technical playbook for ethical hackers and testers, whereas the framework is a big picture for governance and compliance. So next, let's go to threat actors.
Before you can understand how an ethical hacker or a penetration tester can mimic a threat actor, that's a malicious actor, you need to understand the different types of threat actors. And we have some of them we'll be discussing today. Well, those we have today includes the organized crime, which consists of very well funded and motivated groups that will typically use any means or technique or the latest technique to perpetrate their act. So whether it's ransom or data theft, if it can be monetized, this organized crime would definitely use it. The next is hacktivists. So the hacktivists are the type of threat actors that are not motivated by money. The hacktivists are looking to make a point or a statement or to further their belief on a particular concept using cybercrime as their method of attack. So this type of attack are often carried out by stealing sensitive data, and they reveal it to the public for the purpose of embarrassing or financially affecting a given target. Next is the state-sponsored attack, which is like a cyber war. You've heard the Ukraine and the Russia, and now we're having the Iraq and the US thing. So they are all tend to be attacking themselves both physically and in the digital world. So the cyber war and the cyber espionage are two terms that fit into this category. Many governments around the world tend to use cyber attack to steal information from their opponents or their counterparts and then cause a disruption in their system.
Then lastly is insider threats. An insider threat is a threat that comes from within an organization. Typically, they are often normal employees who are tricked into divulging sensitive information, or they mistakenly click on a link that allows attackers to gain access to their computers. However, they could also be malicious insiders who are possibly motivated by revenue or money, or just to get back at the company, something of that nature. So given that, we need to know the perspective to initiate our hacking from. So we have different hacking perspective, and that we shall be discussing on next. Black box, gray box, and white box testing are terms used to define the level of prior knowledge a penetration tester have about a system. So this informs the perspective from which testing is performed, and we can categorize them into the following way. The first is unknown environment testing, which used to be called a black box. In an unknown environment penetration testing, the tester is typically provided only with a very limited amount of information. For instance, the tester may be provided only with the domain name and the IP address that are in the scope for the particular target. The idea of this type of limitation is to have the tester start out from the perspective that an external attacker might have. Typically, an attacker would first determine a target and then begin to gather information about the target under public information, or OSSINC, and this gives more and more information for the attacker to use. The next is known environment testing. In a known environment penetration testing, the tester starts out with a significant amount of information about the organization and the infrastructure. The tester might normally be provided with things like the network diagram, the IP address, configuration, and a set of user credentials. If the scope includes an application, for instance, then the tester might also be provided with source code, maybe a target application. The idea of this type of testing is to identify as many security holes as possible. And next is the partially known environment testing, which is also called a gray box. So for a gray box testing, the tester is somewhat of a hybrid approach between the unknown and the known environment testing. With a partially known environment testing, the tester may be provided with credentials but not full documentation of the network infrastructure. This will allow the tester to still provide result of their testing from the perspective of an external attacker's point of view, considering the fact that most compromises start at the client and work their way through the network. So a good approach would be a scope where tester starts on the inside of the network and have access to a client's machine.
Ethical hacking, also known as penetration testing, involves a structured approach to identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities in a system. So the process is typically divided into phases, each with specific goals and activity. So the goals of the framework is to simulate real-world attack, which allows us to mimic attack scenario. The next is to identify vulnerabilities, which is finding the weakness in that system before the attackers do. Then the third is to improve the security. By understanding how the attackers occur, the risk is reduced and defense is strengthened, and to provide actionable insight. So with clear and detailed information and recommend a fix to that vulnerability. So the ethical hacking phases are one, recognizance. Next is the scanning, followed by you gain access, where your exploitation takes place. Then maintain your access, which is the post-exploitation reporting, and then finally covering your tracks. So we're going to start with the very first one, which is recognizance.
Recognizance is information gathering, and here we have to gather as much information as possible regarding the target system. or the network. The activity here could be active or passive. So let's start with passive first. So for passive, it involves collecting information without directly interacting with the target involved. So it includes open source intelligence, that is OSINT, which is gathering information from publicly available sources such as social media, forums, and search engines. The next is sniffing of the network, which involves monitoring network traffic to gather information about the target. Then we have DNS enumeration, which involves identifying the DNS record for us to, or the individual, for the attacker rather, to understand the target's domain structure. Then we look at the active reconnaissance, which involves us directly interacting with the target to gather more detailed information about the target himself, probably without even knowing. So we look at like the port scanning, which is identifying open ports and service running on the target's device or system. Then banner grabbing, which is extracting information from the service banner to identify software version. Then we have network mapping, which is getting a map of the target's network topology. With this, we tend to use tools like Nmap, very great tool. Then an awesome tool we can use again is Wireshark. I prefer Wireshark in this case. Then Shodan and ReconNG. So next we're going to be looking at scanning, which is identifying the vulnerability. Under scanning, we identify the vulnerabilities and potential entry points in the target system or the network. Our activity here will involve vulnerability scanning, as its name implies. So here we tend to use automated tools to scan for known vulnerability in the target system. The next, we engage in service enumeration, which is identifying and enumerating the service running on open ports. Then also operating system fingerprinting. This gives us the operating system and the version running on this on the target. The tools we tend to use here are Nmap, Nexus, OpenVAS, or even Necto. Number 3 is exploitation. Here we are going to exploit, identify vulnerabilities to gain access to the target system. So what we're going to be doing here is to develop our exploit, which is developing a custom exploit for the identified vulnerability. Then next we're going to execute that exploit, which is exploit execution, where we run the exploit to gain access to the target system. And finally we escalate that privilege so as to gain a higher access right to the compromised system. The tools we're going to be using here are Metasploit, exploit database, and finally custom scripts and payloads.
Next is the post-exploitation, which is creating backdoor. Now remember, we've scanned, we found a loophole, we've exploited that loophole, and we try to escalate our privilege on that loophole or the vulnerability, so which means we are in charge of that system right now. But the thing is, we don't want to stay there for so long for us to be identified. So what we're going to be doing is to create a backdoor in the system so that we can come in whenever. So the objective here is to maintain access to the compromised system and gather additional information about the system or network. So what we're going to be doing here is persistence, so which simply means establishing a method to maintain access to the compromised system or the network. Next is to exfiltrate data, that's data exfiltration, which is extracting sensitive information about the compromised system. Also lateral movement. Remember that I said that we have to escalate privilege. So once you've escalated the privilege, you have to ensure that you have consistent access to it whenever you want to. You can come in, go out, come in and go out, nobody get to sniff you, or the intrusion prevention or detection system doesn't spike and send a rapid message. So you have to be very sensitive about it. That's what happens because we're going to create lateral movement. Once that privilege is given, you should be able, the essence is to initiate a lateral movement, which is moving from the initial compromised system to other net systems on the network or within the same network. So the tools we employ here is Metropreter, PowerShell, Empire, or Cobalt Strike.
Number 5 is covering our tracks. We are to ensure that we erase every possible evidence you might be leaving behind on the target system. This is because we are trying to play like the malicious actors, so we want to see how that will be possible. That's the essence. So the objective here is to ensure that the ethical hackers activity are not detected by the target security system. So our activity here will include 1. Log cleaning. You're to ensure that you remove or alter logs to hide your activity. Then evasion technique, which involves using technique to avoid detection by intrusion detection system or intrusion prevention system and other security measures. Then next is data wiping, where you ensure that any temporary files that was introduced or installed on the system or tools that were used during the hacks are removed. The tools here that we employ are log cleaning scripts and IDS evasion tools.
Next is reporting, which implies documentation and then fixes. So the objective here is to document the findings and provide recommendation for an improved security. What we're going to be doing here first is documentation, and in this documentation it involves creating a detailed report of the findings, which include the vulnerabilities you identified, the exploit used, the data that was accessed, the recommendations, and the remediation. Then present whatever we have found. The tools here we use are just simple. Basically, we use Microsoft Word or any word processing tool or any reporting tool out there. Then, very importantly, screen capture, where you record both audios and the video of everything you're doing, so that you won't be accused of trespassing or doing things you didn't actually do. So here is an example of the vulnerability assessment that was conducted on an XYZ company. First, you state the purpose and the scope, the key finding, then the technical details, which involve your identify vulnerabilities. Under this section, you're going to state it out, describing it and stating its severity, the impact, and the recommendation which you have for that given vulnerability. If you have 2, 3, for each of them, you're going to be stating this thing. Then we have the overall remediation steps, which you're going to pull out, and then state a general recommendation on that remediation steps. Then finally, you're going to state the specific remediation steps, the steps to help achieve these remediation. You're going to state it here, but it's very critical that you work with the relevant team to address the identified vulnerabilities. You follow up to ensure that the vulnerabilities have been mitigated, and then you rescan the system or the network to verify that the issue have been resolved. So this is what is to be done at the reporting stage or reporting phase.
The importance of ethical hacking to the society is huge, cannot be overemphasized. So let's just pick this few. Protection of sensitive data is very important, for personal records to finance to health. Then prevention of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure like the power sector, the rail, the hospitals. All of these negative effects have been reflected in the years past, where cyber attack tend to cripple this critical infrastructure of nations of the West. And next, safeguarding national security and also building trust in the digital system and technology. To become an ethical hacker, you must first and foremost gain knowledge in networking, programming, and be able to use cybersecurity tools. You should also obtain certifications like the Certified Ethical Hacker, then Offensive Security Certified Professional, or even the certified information system security professionals, any of those, then you should also be able to develop problem solving skills and analytical skills. And most importantly, you must learn to stay ethical and committed to protecting society. And then you should just find a mentor because it's needed as well. Having said all this, next we should do is setting up our penetration testing lab. We need to go into the hands-on. But before we hit on the hands-on proper, I'll have to do a breakdown and a theoretical setup for you so you have a picture of it. So let's delve in. So at this juncture, we're going to be building our penetration testing lab or our cybersecurity lab. The reason is that we are not expected to conduct this test in a live environment. So we're going to be doing it in a controlled environment, and that's the essence of designing or building a cybersecurity lab. Now, remember that this is for educational purpose. You are bounded by the disclaimer at the beginning of this session, hence you have signed the ethical pledge. So the very first thing we're going to be doing is to download and install your virtual machine box. So the virtual machine box, in my case I'm using VirtualBox. So just download it whether for Mac or for Windows, install it on there. That's the very first icon you'll see at the top there. Then the next, or the first image rather, then the next you're seeing is your Kali Linux Windows operating system, Metasploitable, and that is Parrot, but I don't have Parrot on here. I rather have Ubuntu. So those are the ones I have, the OSs I have installed within my box. I don't want the video to be so long, so just go on and search for the OSs for virtual machine. Go on your search engine and look for it. For Kali, you can do that. Then for Windows, just look for vulnerable machine, vulnerable Windows. So I have Windows 7, which is what I will show you about that shortly. Then I have Metasploitable 2 and Metasploitable 3. Then I also have Ubuntu. So these are the OSs that will be running on my box. So I have the OSs installed and perfectly running on my box. So usually the extensions for these OSs are either OVA, that's .OVA, also .VMI,
ISO.
So as you can see on the screen, so just take note of that. So when you're going online, search for the OSs for these virtual machines. So these things are going to run perfectly within your box. So what the other part you're seeing, the lower part of the screen where you see the Nmap, Metasploit, Bob Suite, Wireshark, they're all tools are within Kali Linux. You can also find it in Parrot, because those are going to be your instruments to perpetrate your acts as your as a cybersecurity expert or as the ethical hacker, the case may be. So the next thing I'm going to show you is your resource allocation on your host machine. Before I proceed to talking about the resource allocation for my setup, I would like to state that you should not use any laptop because you just have a laptop, you want to use it. Make sure you use a gaming PC or what we call a workstation. I repeat, make sure it's a workstation. So if you tell me you have a Core i9 10 Gen and it can handle it, you must be joking. I'd rather pick a Core i5 workstation 8 Gen than to go for Core i9. So just know the difference. It's way rugged, wipe off the graphics card, the multiple cores. So it's designed for such heavy tasks. So please remember you to use a workstation or a gaming PC for a cybersecurity lab. Don't fall Mugu or fall Dundee for a person with a very expensive laptop, right? So moving on, for the RAM and the disk allocation, make sure you just have minimum of 16 gig RAM to allocate at least say 120 gig for the whole setup from your storage. So the first is my Kali Linux. I'm going to be allocating a RAM of 4 to it, and the disk space about 60 gig because that's going to be where the major work is going to be on. So all these things you're seeing here will be in your host computer. I'm using Windows 11, so everything is going to be within, all the things you're seeing here will be inside my Windows 11 machine. All right, so I start again. My Kali Linux is a 4 gig RAM, minimum of a 16 gig. The network, I'm going to be assigning host only to one of the adapters. I'm going to show all this and the setup as we proceed. I'm going to do it in the hands-on. Then your network adapter, you make the other adapter be NAT. The reason why you have NAT is because you have to update your packages in your Kali Linux. Then the next is X Ubuntu. It's actually a light version of Ubuntu, so I just pick X Ubuntu because I need to host a vulnerable machine within that X Ubuntu. We call it nested hosting. So I'm hosting Metasploitable 3 inside my X Ubuntu, and for that I'm allocating a 2 gig RAM. That's for the X Ubuntu, a 30 gig storage, then host only, and also NAT, just like my Kali. The reason why I'm doing that also for Ubuntu is because of updates as well. Now for the Metasploitable 3 that is hosted inside the X Ubuntu, I'm going to just give it the same RAM as I'm giving my X Ubuntu. You'll see that also. Then my disk space, I'm just going to extract a little so that the X Ubuntu can breathe. But I'm not going to allocate a NAT to it because Metasploitable 3 is very vulnerable, so I'm not going to assign it NAT to it. So it cannot, shall not, and will never see the internet. So don't even give it NAT. The same with Metasploitable 2, I'll have it running on my host machine as well, in the same environment as your Kali, X Ubuntu, and your Metasploitable 3, alongside with the window. You can see the allocation I'm giving to the RAMs because they are pretty light, so just 1 gig each, and say 10 and 25. Then the same network adapter for all. Now Windows 11, like I said before, is my host machine. That is the laptop I am using. All right, and its default is going to be for host only. The network, you just connect it to your Wi-Fi, or you have some Ethernet as it is. So the remaining RAM is what that your host is going to be using. Now the idea is that you can open your command prompt and ping any of this and it will respond. So what we're trying to do is replicate a real life scenario whereby the an individual attacker just enters a network and try to misbehave within it. So the Kali is going to assume the attacker's position. Metasploitable 2, Metasploitable 3, which is nested inside my X Ubuntu. Then Windows 7 are all going to be victims. They're like 3 different computers on the network, right? So our Windows 11 is the cybersecurity expert who is invited to the organization to come do a penetration testing. So on my host machine, which is my Windows 11, I'm going to be running Wireshark plus a Snort that will enable me to see everything going on the network. And the network access, remember, it's only when you need to connect to the internet, you connect your Kali Linux and your X Ubuntu to the internet. That's why you have the NAT on them. And remember, very, very important, no vulnerable machine must see the internet. I repeat, they must not see the internet. And ensure that all machines can ping or talk to each other. So let's proceed to the hands-on, and I'll show you my lab environment and show you the setup as well. So when you install and set up yours, it will be a guiding path for you. Then we can now see our Wireshark and Snort at work. So let's delve in.
So we start this demo with going to our tools and network. So we're going to be creating a network interface. If you don't have, that's what you're going to be doing. So it has been graded, but I don't need it, so I'm just going to take it out and stick with my old one because it has been configured already. So I'm just going to go to the DHCP server and enable it as well. So I've set the server mode, both the upper address and the lower address bound. So the next, I'm going to go to the virtual box. So this is one of my virtual box, and the first I'm going to be initiating is the virtual machine for Kali Linux. Here is the RAM I gave to it, and also the CPU, the storage as described earlier. Then I go to the network, which is an important section. So ensure that your network adapter is enabled, and you're going to set it to host only for the first adapter. Then the second one, I'm going to select NAT. The essence of this NAT, as I told you earlier, is so that I can update certain dependencies or go online if I need to, using the Calyx. So then next is the Windows. So I'm going to show you that as well, so you can see the base memory, which is just 2. I'm giving it to it on as compared to the 4 which I gave to Kali Linux, and the RAM is just 1. And then to the storage. And now for the network adapter 2, ensure you have nothing activated or you don't have it enabled there. Just stick to the host only adapter because you just want to play within the system. And the next I'm going to go to is the Metasploitable. I'm just going to go to setting. So you could either use the right click and click on settings, or you go up there. You can see the base RAM is less than 1. Then also the CPU, the RAM, I'm only giving it 1 as well. Then for the storage, it's using a virtual disk, and this will be enabled at the point of installation. Like I told you, just leave it at host only so it doesn't connect to the internet. Remember, adapter 2 is not activated here, it's not enabled, because you do not want any of these vulnerable machines to go online. So the next is X Ubuntu, which is going to be my nested host for the Metasploitable 3. So here I'm giving it 2 for the RAM, and of course the storage, as I explained earlier. So just like the Kali Linux, I'm going to enable adapter 2 and give it a NAT because I need to update. Occasionally I'll need to go online using that OS or using the machine. So here's just a summary of it. The adapter 1 for my Ubuntu is host only, whereas adapter 2 is NAT because I need to go online occasionally for updating as Linux requires. So the same thing for the Kali Linux, exactly the same setup. Then observe that Kali is a Debian and Ubuntu is Ubuntu. So let's just initiate that or start up my Kali Linux. As you can see from the preview window, it's running already. The next, I'm going to open the other vulnerable machine, which is my Windows. I'll let it run as well. From the preview, you can see that it's open as well. Old Windows sound. Miss that sound. So next is Metasploitable. So while that is running, let's just go onto our Windows and try and make it more vulnerable by going to the firewall and disabling it as well. Yeah, that is switched off, but I want to ensure that it's totally off. So I'm just going to go to the advanced settings and switch it off. Yes, from there, as you can see, it was on initially. So I'm just going to switch it off totally to make it totally vulnerable. So back to our Metasploitable 2. It's open. The password is also MSF admin. If you don't know, but anyway, you should know, because when you download it, it will be given to you there as well. So both password and username. So you use a Hive config to check for your IP address. I just need to know if that works. So alternatively, you can also use IPA, which just gives you all of it and the necessary information. So just to ensure that my vulnerable machines are talking to each other, like the Windows and the Metasploitable, I'm just going to count the number of pings. That's the ICMP. I'm trying to talk to it. Yes, so it's a success. Now next is to install my Snort, which is my IDP and IPS. Just sign up, go to downloads, then first you download the source, because you need it at the point of configuration. I'm going to make a separate video for that, on how to configure your Snort. So next I'm just going to the snapshots, which is where I'm going to be getting my configuration files to guide for the rules which I'll be given my Snort. Then finally I'm just going to install the exe, because I'm using Windows. So my installer for the Snort, I'm going to get it on running. So I agree with that. If check as is, then install straight up, then that's okay. And the next you to install your MP cap, because Snort needs it as well. So either go to downloads or just Windows 11. Yeah, just Windows 11, and then we go down. We're going to look for the installer as well. Let's go to because that's the latest as of this year, February 2026. So I'm going to get that running as well. Install. I've done that already, so yeah, so that's why it stays fast. So finish, and then we go back to a host machine, which is my Windows 11. So I'm going to initiate Snort now, let it be active. So Snort, I just first of all change my directory and go to Snort, and then here is this Snort version. Yep. So next is to look for the interface, as you can see. So I'm going to call up my interface. The interface I'm looking for is the one that's got the network adapter that all my vulnerable machines will be on, so which is the 8. So just saying Snort, use the interface 8 and print the console, print it on the console following this rule from my snort.config. So, and send an alert. So that's what it's going to do. So that's what this information is saying, or this code is trying to say. So yes, so Snort is up and running. So let me go on to my Kali. So I'm going to try and do an Nmap scan of the network where all my PCs. So as it is now, my Windows 11 is acting like a cybersecurity expert who has come to see what's going on in the network of an organization. So as a person, I'm now seeing that, oh, there are some things going on here. Somebody is talking to somebody. All right. So it's, as you can see, it's talking to 14, talking to, that's the IP address 14. So which computer is that 14? It's talking to 11, talking to 12. So there's something going on here. And if you remember, 11 is actually my vulnerable machine. So which of them is 12? Let's see. You can see, yeah, this is 14. So this Windows has IP address of 14. So it's also talking to 14, and it's saying, oh, okay. So as a cybersecurity expert, I'm saying, okay, there's a system trying to talk to 14. So I open up my Wireshark and say, oh, there's a lot of communication going on here, and I can see the 111s going on. So, but to make a sense of this, I just go to statistics and go to conversation to know who is talking to who. And from here, I can see that one is doing so much of a talking, right? You can see from 10 to 11 to 14. You can see ones all through. You can see dots 10, which that's another of the vulnerable machine on the network. You can see the 12, then 30, and then 14. So what is Snort really saying now? Let's see what Snort is giving us. But with this alone is sufficient for you to say that something is going on the network. All right, as you can see below, talking to 12, and there's a possible information leak. So which means somebody is trying to hack into the system or trying to talk to the system. And also you can see to 14, there's a possible information leak. This is what Snort is doing. That's why it's called the intrusion prevention and detection system. So that's this. So from what I can see now as a cybersecurity expert, somebody is trying to forcefully talk to the computers on my network, and with that I can then fight. So you can decide to do a TCP search to see what is really happening, which port has been accessed, because what is going on here, this red lines you're seeing here in black, is just trying to tell you that it's trying to open a port, but the door is saying, I don't know whether I can open it or not. So from the hacker's perspective, I can see now, oh, then there's a possible opening, so let me run a Metasploit, and that's what I'm doing now. With a Metasploit, I'll be able to take advantage of whatever possible vulnerability there is on the network systems. So every PC that's connected that I'm talking to, I'll try to look for a loophole or vulnerability within them. So like what you're seeing now, I can decide to use Eternal Blue or search for any of the backdoors there is. And here on, the rest is the future. So to set up the communication port and set up the IP address, then eventually I run, so I can be listening to or talking to the PC. So like I said, the rest is the future going forward. Basically that's it. What we've seen so far is just a preliminary, and what we've seen and learned today, you can see that hackers are just curious individuals who want to understand how things work and how to make them more secure. So it's safe to say that hacking is not a crime, but the intent behind it is what defines it. We can conclude by saying that ethical hackers play a critical role in safeguarding the society, and their work just ensures trust and security in the digital world. It's necessary that we encourage, support, and recognize their contribution to the society and the digital space. With that, we come to the end of today's session, and we have to wrap it up by evaluating ourselves. First, can you define ethical hacking? Distinguish between ethical hacking and malicious hacking. Mention some types of penetration testing. Explain the 3 penetration testing perspective. Then identify some of these threat actors. Enumerate the 5 ethical hacking phases. And finally, I believe you know how to set up a lab, because if not, please just need to go back. At least install 2 of them. Say Kali and maybe Metasploitable 2. Just stick with those 2, at least for a start.
Until we see again.
Remember, hackers no dey wear hoodie for night where they press. So they fit just dey press where they flex their life for one corner. Stay safe, stay sharp, and stay secure.